20 for the Extra Point with Jerry Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Investing in infrastructure. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. That's what President Biden wants to focus on, and Congress is set to discuss it this week.
Infrastructure is normally an issue that both parties are willing to work on or at least talk about. Republicans are likely to question the cost, especially Congress spending nearly $2 trillion on the latest stimulus bill. Democrats, though, will likely push forward with the plan as they control both the House and Senate. Still, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says a bipartisan bill is possible.
So I put out called upon my chairs of the committees of jurisdiction to reach out to the Republicans to see what we can do, as we have traditionally done, in a bipartisan way. This is about broadband, it's about water systems, it's about mass transit, it's about good paying jobs all over the country.
Like the stimulus, though, Republicans may argue any future bill will contain too much money for Democratic priorities.
Fox's Mark Meredith reporting. Meanwhile, the situation at the border continues, complicated further now by weather conditions in Texas. Fox's Griff Jenkins is there.
Here where we are at the gate going into the area where they receive the migrants that come across the river, they've been very active where the migrants are coming across the Rio Grande River in almost record numbers, and certainly record numbers for this time of year.
FEMA has now been asked to provide support at the border. And while the calls get louder for New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to resign, President Biden takes a more measured response.
The president broke his silence on the investigation surrounding Cuomo after he returned home from Delaware Sunday night.
I think the investigation is underway and we should see what it brings us.
And that's the same message the New York governor and fellow Democrat is making. 7 women are accusing him of sexual misconduct. Cuomo claims he never touched anyone inappropriately and said
to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Gunfire breaks out at a party early Sunday morning in Chicago.
A fight broke out between several people attending the pop-up party at a Park Manor business a little before 5 a.m. That's when gunfire erupted, with Superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, David Brown, saying
15 people were shot. 2 of those 15 people shot are deceased. 4 guns were recovered at the scene.
The others wounded were all listed in serious or critical condition at hospitals. The shooting was one of the most violent in terms of number of people hurt in recent Chicago memory. So far this year, police stats show that officers have responded to 393 shooting incidents across the city through March 7th. That's a 31% increase over the same period last year. Ted Lindner, Fox News.
And police in North Carolina evacuated local businesses after they found several suspected explosive devices near a Baptist church and a county building. Officers say they found several small devices that had not been detonated after responding to the call. There were no injuries. Plus, demonstrators gathered in major cities on the West Coast Saturday to mark the 1-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's death. But some of the protests turned violent.
Things got pretty crazy, leading to at least 24 arrests in those 3 cities. The Seattle Police Department made more than a dozen of those arrests as protesters there confronted officers, some allegedly smashing windows and graffitiing property. At one point, officers are seen spraying protesters with what appears to be an eye irritant as the 2 sides get into a physical confrontation. In Los Angeles, 3 officers there were injured and at least 11 people were arrested after some demonstrators were seen smashing store windows, others throwing rocks at police officers in riot gear. You even see protesters in one video posted to social media jumping on top of a police cruiser as it speeds away near the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Fox's Charles Watson. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. If you are a small business, you may be interested in a federal program called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This program can provide federal funds to match equity investments into your company or help you get lower interest rates at local banks. To find out more on how this program can help your small business, please contact your Guam Congressional Office at 475-6453 or at michael.sannicolas@mail.house.gov.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Half a day, this is Honey. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Sunday brunch at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro is back. Come and enjoy Mezcla's true taste of Guam. Open for 2 seatings at 10:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. $28.95 for adults and $14.95 for kids 5 to 11 years old. Call 479-2652 or 2653 for reservations. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Wow, I'm glad to have the opportunity to say that again after 2 whole days of no tall tales. But here we are, so glad to be back with all the tailgaters out there at our international radio listening audience. I'm going to start right off with Zemi Ikotny. So today, the Daily News, instead of running a local editorial like they haven't been doing for a year, run something from the governor of Maryland, a certain Larry Hogan. He's the new chair of No Labels, which works to build a bipartisan governing condition to address the nation's problems. Good luck, Larry. And the editorial says, Larry says, the president has preached unity, but Democrats have been fighting against it. Hello. Quote, to restore the soul and to secure the future of America requires more than words. It requires that most elusive of things in a democracy, unity. When President Joe Biden spoke those words in an inaugural address, I hoped he understood that unity would require standing up to the far left of his party and demanding an end to the partisan dysfunction in Washington. Unfortunately, as he signs into law a nearly $2 trillion spending bill crammed through on strictly party line vote, we've yet to see anything more bipartisan than words from the president. This should have been an issue where we could have found some common ground. Both parties agree that at least some relief is desperately needed. However, despite having some of the narrowest majorities in recent history, Democrat leaders seem more interested in loading up the bill with pet projects for special interest groups than actually securing any Republican votes. Biden preaches unity, Democrats ignore it. While President Biden preached about unity, his party refused to make concessions and outright rejected nearly every Republican amendment that was offered to the bill. Over the past two presidencies, we've come to accept this hyper-partisan process as the new normal. We shouldn't. In the state of Maryland, we recently passed our own $1 billion Wuhan virus relief bill with near unanimous support from both parties. An infrastructure bill offers President Biden another golden opportunity to live up to the promise of his inaugural address. This is an issue where there's overwhelming bipartisan consensus that action is absolutely necessary. If Washington can't find a way to work together on this issue, then I don't know where we will. Though the partisan process over the past month unquestionably will make things a lot more difficult, I'm committed to working with the President and Congress to secure bipartisan support. As chairman of the National Governors Association, I led a year-long initiative focused on rebuilding America's crumbling infrastructure that gathered input from both Democrat and Republican governors, as well as from leaders from business, labor, and academia. Okay, and I'll just go to the end of the editorial here. In the wake of the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, it's clear that the absence of any bipartisan problem solving is not just a threat to good governance, but perhaps to democracy itself. Here we go again. Yet Washington continues to pour gasoline on the fire of America's divisions. The window for bipartisanship might be narrowing, but it's never too late to change course. As we move onto infrastructure, we can't let it close completely. Well, very nice sentiments, Governor Hogan, but I'm afraid that's all it is, nice sentiments. I don't think, even within the Democrat Party, the far left over there at the Squad and the Burn, et cetera, those folks are at war with people in their own party, and it's just a matter of time before they start tearing their own president to pieces for not being woke enough. All right, let's see what the Post has to say for today. We all can do our part to get the island ready for tourists in May. Yeah. Another one of those kinds of editorials. GVB and its leadership have been instrumental in reopening businesses safely. Restaurants, shopping centers, spas, and yes, bars are all patronized by our visitors. It's essential that our island figures out how to keep these companies operating. Although there's room for debate on exactly what protocols or restrictions are absolutely necessary, everyone should support our tourism revenue spreading to as many places as it can while we prevent the spread of corona, as your Wuhan virus infection imported by tourists or exported by our residents. It's just more of the same old thing here. I don't think I'll spend a whole lot of time with it. May 1 is still the target date to reopen Guam for tourists. With the benefit of hindsight, perhaps some of these projects or improvements could have been made sooner. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. For instance, more retail service workers should be vaccinated ahead of the influx of customers. But certainly the willingness exists from the very top of our government to make this reopening successful and safe. And here's the punchline. We can all do our part to get the island ready for this important date. We can clean up our own little corner of Guam. We can keep wearing our masks. And for those of us fortunate enough to have kept our pre-pandemic salaries, we can keep supporting the local businesses who are fighting to stay open until tourists return. Well, I'll keep doing my part. keep my part of the desk here clean, my little corner of the island, and I'll keep spending my meager salary on the businesses downtown that I frequent from time to time. Okay, let's go from there to the card. And I've got my program summary right here. Steve Ignacio says he still doesn't know what's cooking at Jerry Restaurant, as it were, Jerry Kitchen. Some comps came forward to clue him in. Friday, we got the latest from Steve. Steve is still making the news, not because of what he's done, but, as the real Joe Cruz would say, what he hasn't done. A line straight from Sherlock Holmes. The governor addressed Steve and Hattickgate. Hattickgate today tells us that Jack doesn't know what forgery is. Someone to call Jack and say, Jack, 93.3, because Bob's going to tell you what forgery is. Just the fact that you can do it doesn't necessarily mean that you know what it is, right, Jack? We take a look at the legendary P.T. Barnum, who was famous for saying, "There's a fool born every minute." P.T. Barnum, the great entertainer. Ringling Brothers. There you go. Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey. He was the Barnum and Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey. So there's a sort of drawn-out connection between P.T. Barnum and our own Calamity Jane Flores. And then Tucker Carlson took on the USMC, and he was right.
This was interesting.
And he was right. Yeah, I hate to say it, but even the Marine Corps is making efforts to be woke. What a shame. And Pacific Data System says that GPA got the wrong number when it comes to leasing submerged lands. And then, in case you need it, Sam Betances gives a lesson on the proper role of non-Chamorros here on our island. He writes a column for the Post once in a while.
Is there a percentage test?
He shows you how it's done. And then Barry Weiss, later the New York Times, explaining that being woke, not being woke enough is bad too. She's the one that quit the New York Times because they were harassing her so much. Not because she wasn't woke. She just wasn't woke enough. So she kind of lays some of that out for us. And it ties in nicely with the woke vocabulary lesson that I've spent a couple days on. Okay, so let's start right out with more Steve Ignacio. And this is an article from the Post. Probe continues more than 130 days after police shooting. The investigation into the officer-involved shooting that led to the death of 42-year-old Xavier Tedtautau in November 2020 continues, according to the Office of the Attorney General. As of Friday, it's been 131 days since the shooting incident in Tamuning. Guam Police Chief Steve Ignacio told the Guam Daily Post last month that the result of the investigation by both GPD and the Attorney General could be released during the first week of March.
2022?
Yeah, he didn't say what year. He just said the first week of March. However, no new information on the case has been released. There's no word on when the Attorney General's office will complete the homicide investigation. Ignacio planned to meet with the AG's office staff to discuss the next step. Boy, that's Steve. He's just right. He was planning to have a meeting. The 4 officers being investigated have been back to work since December 2020. The police chief declined to say if any of the officers will receive disciplinary action. He doesn't talk about things like that. How would he know? You know, how would he know?
They're on motorcycle theft duty.
Yeah, right. November 3, 2020, officers responded to a theft complaint at an apartment along Bonito Street in Tuning. Officers reportedly spotted two people inside a parked car that had been reported stolen. Ignacio previously stated the driver accelerated and struck a marked patrol car and another vehicle in the parking lot before police opened fire, according to Post files. Officers fired dozens of rounds, resulting in the death of Xavier Tedtautau and injuring his wife, Vicky Ann Tedtautau, who sustained at least 8 gunshot wounds, according to Xavier's family. So Steve doesn't have anything to say about that. It's only been 131 days, and you know what's the hurry? The Tautaus aren't going to go anywhere. So, unfortunately, being in a parked car is more dangerous than turning a Chinese restaurant into a drive-in.
You know who else has been silent?
Say again?
You know who else has been silent? Black Lives Matters.
Black Lives Matter. Yeah, and here we had two people, a person killed by a cop. Where's Black Lives Matter? Come on, you guys. Yeah, so if you're sitting in a parked car and a police car pulls up and you drive away, you could get shot dozens of times. But if you pull off the roadway, jump the median, cross the other lane of traffic, jump the curb, go airborne into the front of a Chinese restaurant named Jerry Kitchen, not only will nothing happen to you, nobody will even know who you are. So if you got to make choices, you know, some night, I guess that's the rule. The mayors are combating illegal cockfights. According to Candid News, there's an illegal cockfight up in Jonia, and it's been going on for quite some time. And a complaint was made to the police department. According to Candid News, Troy, quote, Anne, the supposed name of the cockpit owner, is in a romantic relationship with an unnamed police officer, according to 2 separate sources of information. I did call Northern Precinct and asked to speak to their commander to report the cockpit, but he was not available, Mayor's Counsel Jesse Alec told Candid. So I reported the crime to Crime Stoppers. I've been meaning to go up there myself, etc. Candid has placed several calls to the office of the Chief of Police to inquire whether Guam Police Department is conducting any investigation based on the mayor's criminal report. As usual, Police Chief Steve Ignacio has not returned our call for comment. Very consistent, yeah. It's not what he does, it's what he doesn't do. And I just happened to stumble across this article online coming from Portland that the Portland mayor wants to bring back a uniformed police team to combat violence. You remember in Portland, they abolished the police? Remember how woke they were in Portland? Yeah.
Call a social worker.
Yeah, we'll just call a social worker. Yeah. Let's see. Mayor Wheeler's apparently experienced something of a road to Damascus moment and now wants $2 million to reestablish the gun violence team. Wheeler addressed the overarching question, how the new police approach would differ from the former police gun violence reduction team, disbanded in June by the city council amid $15 million in budget cuts. Yeah. So there you go. So I have a suggestion that would solve both Guam and Portland's problem at the same time. Apparently in Portland, they're not looking for vigorous law enforcement. They'll just let, and they're doing it again. Antifa and Black Lives Matter are just tearing the city apart. They're attacking the U.S. courthouse, and they complained when Trump sent in federal forces to protect the courthouse. So they're just going wild there. Here on Guam, we have a police chief who really hasn't done anything and doesn't appear to be planning to do anything about the crimes that we know of right here. Even when one almost jumps up and bites him in the nose, like the Jerry Kitchen incident, he does nothing. So we could solve both of our problems. We'll send Chief Ignacio to Portland. They'll love him because he won't do anything. And as far as we're concerned, anybody they put in place of Chief Ignacio has got to be an improvement. The only thing is we got to make sure that the new chief does not own a motorcycle, because we don't want to spend a lot of patrol time doing site checks on that motorcycle like we've done with Chief Ignacio. All right, keep up the... no, I can't say that. I can't say keep up the good work, Chief Ignacio. Start doing something, Chief Ignacio. Okay, next on the card is Hattick versus forgery. Now, you all remember Jack Hattick. He's the administrator of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And a few weeks ago, a land agent named Lydia Tellou came to the commission and said, there's a report that you have here, a land agent's report, that has recommendations that I can't get on the right side of, but I was coerced to make those recommendations. And the recommendations are to let two people swap places in line. Everybody knows that you can't do that. We went through that during the peak of Farron regime at the Land Trust Commission, and you just can't do it. Those swaps are void. So Jack wanted to let the husband who was farther back than the wife, in other words, higher priority than the wife, swap with the wife. Can't do that. You can't swap. And then to further complicate the matter, the husband wasn't even ineligible. So apparently he was going to swap his ineligibility for his wife. And Hattick was recommending to the commission that the property be leased to these people. I mean, that was what the land agent report said. And Lydia Tellou said, nah, I told him that's how we got in trouble last year. That's not right. We can't do that. And then Hattick came along and said, well, I'm sorry if Lydia's feelings were hurt. Actually, I didn't coerce her. I added to the report myself. I have a copy of the report here somewhere, I think. And the report says on the top, I probably can't find it, but I've looked at it enough. I know exactly what it says. Yeah, I have it here. Oh, that's Senator Brown's letter. Yeah, on the top of the report, it says Land Agent Report. So anyone who picks up that, and that's all, it's not attributed to anybody else. Anyone who picked up that report would say, well, this is a land agent report. There are only, 3 or 4 land agents at CLTC. It's got to be one of theirs. So the part about the line swap, swapping the line, was added by Jack Hattick because he came in and confessed. He said, I have to make it clear that I didn't coerce Lydia Tellou. I just added some things to the report myself. Obviously not with her permission, because that's why she was at the commission. So a report that anyone who would pick it up would recognize as a land agent report had language added to it, not by a land agent, not by the author of the report, but by somebody else. So that causes me to go to 46.10, forgery, 9 GCA 4610. A person is guilty of forgery if with intent to defraud or injure anyone, or with knowledge that he is facilitating a fraud or injury to be perpetrated by anyone, he falsely alters a written instrument by change without authorization by anyone entitled to grant it of a written instrument by means of insertion of new matter. Now, in this story here, the story that ran in KOM, Chamorro Land Trust Commission Director Jack Haddock said he has no comment on Senator Brown's letter to the Maga Haga regarding a land agent's allegation he attempted to coerce her into allowing a lease applicant to give someone else their place in line, something the Office of the Attorney General said is a violation. Brown referenced land agent Lydia Toulouse's testimony before the CLTC board. This is KOAM. Very good, KOAM.
It's in the name.
Yeah. I don't have any response to Senator Brown, Haddock said. All I know that the chairman had made and established that he wants to give his report to the commission. So at this time, I'm going to wait for that report with my fingers crossed, Haddock said. I don't know what's in the substance of the report, but I want to defer to the chairman on that situation. Senator Brown also raised issues with adding items to the land agent's report. In her letter to the governor, she said Haddock confessed to forgery during a CLTC meeting. KOAM asked the director if he indeed committed forgery. Now, here's the first word out of Haddock's mouth: honestly. Now, I always get a kick out of that. and here's today's public speaking tip for the day. Have you ever heard anybody say this? They're trying to convince you of something, and they start out by saying, well, to be honest with you, or honestly. Now, what that suggests is if they don't preface their remarks with that, they're lying through their teeth. It's like saying, ordinarily, I'm a really bad liar. I'm a big liar. But today, to be honest with you. So Haddock's answer starts out with the word honestly. Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know. I have to look at the legal definition of forgery. I really don't know. Now, this guy is the administrator of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, literally millions of dollars worth of real property in that portfolio, high-powered things like the subterranean lease matters coming before him, and he doesn't know what forgery is. He'll be honest about it. He just doesn't know. Yeah, it's great.
Don't know Jack Haddock.
Yeah, he doesn't know Jack. All right, let's take a short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Chili's is bringing you a full meal offer with 3 for Me for just $15. You get a beverage, a starter, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola or iced tea, pick a starter, then select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like Cajun pasta with grilled chicken, ranchero chicken tacos, or the savory Santa Fe burger. Dine in today or visit Chili'sGuam.com for delivery and to-go options. Chili's, 3 for Me for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, savor the moment.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
All right. Next item on the card is Calamity Jane versus Chamorro Babies. And this is the P.T. Barnum connection. Did you ever wonder how some cases get to the Supreme Court of the United States? Yeah, of course you know that it starts out with somebody suing somebody or somebody being prosecuted for a crime. And you know that the case will percolate up through a state court system to the state Supreme Court. And then the losing party can file a petition for writ of certiorari with the Supreme Court. And if 4 justices on the Supreme Court sign off to grant certiorari, then that case gets to the Supreme Court. And believe it or not, throughout history, there have been attempts to game the system in such a manner that a case gets to the Supreme Court that really is not something that the parties are super concerned about because it's going to cost them money or their liberty or something like that. They just want to make some new constitutional law. And without going into a lot of details, that's what happened with Dred Scott versus Sanford. One of the worst decisions the court ever decided. And in that case, Dred Scott, who was a slave, was taken to Minnesota, of all places, which was a free state. And then when he went back to Missouri, the argument was, well, when he went to that free state, he became free. And therefore, any attempt to hold him in bondage in Missouri would be illegal. Boy, did that blow up on, I can't remember the names of the people that set that one up, but it really blew up in their faces because they wound up much worse after that than they were before. So here's another example, you know, about Redu and Kaneshiro and the ACLU suing everybody on Guam but Snow White and 2 of the dwarfs. Well, in 1879, P.T. Barnum, then serving as a Connecticut state senator, introduced a bill prohibiting the distribution of information on contraception and abortion and the use of, quote, any drug, medicine, article, or instrument for the purpose of presenting, as you were preventing, conception. The Great Showman's Bill passed, becoming among the most restrictive birth control laws in the United States. Under the Barnum Act, married couples faced arrest and imprisonment for using birth control. Though it remained on the books, authorities largely ignored the law until the middle of the 20th century, when many doctors quietly prescribed contraceptives for their patients, and especially in those cases where pregnancy posed serious health risks. In the 1920s, the Connecticut Birth Control League began opening offices in the state and attempted to convince the state legislature to repeal the Barnum Act, which at that time seemed hopelessly out of date. The struggle went on for decades. In 1950, Estelle Griswold and her husband Richard moved to New Haven and took up residence next to the offices of the Planned Parenthood League of Connecticut. Griswold had been born in Hartford, and both she and her husband attended Hartford High. Prior to relocating to New Haven, the Griswolds lived in Europe, where Richard worked for the State Department while Estelle engaged in something else. Estelle eventually became the executive director of the Planned Parenthood League of Connecticut. See how this is all starting to weave together? She continued the fight against the Barnum Act and helped stage border runs, taking the women seeking information about birth control access across state lines into New York and Rhode Island. In 1960, the United States Food and Drug Administration approved the first oral contraceptive, making safe, effective birth control available, but not in Connecticut. The following year, Estelle Griswold and C. Lee Buxton, chair of Yale's Medical School's Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and a volunteer with the Planned Parenthood League of Connecticut, decided to challenge the Barnum Act in court. In a deliberate act of civil disobedience, they opened a small clinic near the PPLC office. The clinic immediately received numerous requests from married women seeking advice on birth control. Detectives also showed up promptly to ask questions and investigate. On November 9, 1961, authorities shut down the clinic just a few days after it opened. I suspect that if you looked at the lease on the clinic, it was for 30 days because they knew what was going to happen. They arrested Griswold and Buxton, convicted them, and fined them $100 apiece. When the defendants appealed to the Connecticut Supreme Court, the court upheld the convictions. Estelle then appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Within Connecticut, the case became known as the Buxton's case, but Estelle's appeal to the nation's highest court that went down in legal history was Griswold versus Connecticut, which in my mind is right up there with Dred Scott versus Sanford. So, in other words, Mrs. Griswold provoked the situation, knowing she was going to get arrested, probably invited the police to come over to her shop. Connecticut Supreme Court affirmed. Remember what I mentioned about 4 justices of the U.S. Supreme Court needed to sign to grant a petition for writ of certiorari. Well, Justice William O. Douglas was a justice on the Supreme Court at that time, about as liberal as anybody who has ever been on the Supreme Court. And he was one of the moving forces behind this case, Griswold versus Connecticut. The Supreme Court granted certiorari and decided Griswold versus Connecticut by saying that the Connecticut law violated the Griswolds and everybody else's right of privacy. Now, of course, strict constructionists like me were out in the gallery hollering, "It ain't in the Constitution! The word privacy isn't in there!" But the court went on to explain that the concept of privacy is located in the penumbras and emanations of the Bill of Rights. Penumbras of the Bill of Rights. That's where you find it.
Hide and seek champion.
Exactly, yeah. So based on that, the Supreme Court found this right of privacy, and that was the beginning of the end of common sense, because that was the underlying plank in Roe versus Wade and all of the cases that followed that, is protection of the woman's right to privacy. And the Ogerfell case, allowing Herman to marry Henry. To deny 2 men the right to marriage is a denial of their privacy. So I think it's really important then to notice that in this particular case, It really wasn't a real controversy. It was a controversy that the Griswold and the other guy set out to create, set out to get arrested, because, you know, when you are convicted of a crime, and you are appealing, the whole standing question is very easy. Of course you have standing. You were found guilty of a crime. You were found guilty of violating a law that's unconstitutional. So we go from there, and I've got a paper right in front of me here now it's dated November 20, 2020. And it says, Dear Dr. Kaneshiro, congratulations. The Guam Board of Medical Examiners approved your application for medical license during their regular board meeting held on November 18, and hereby issues you your medical license number M2234, effective November 18, to practice medicine and surgery in Guam. The expiration date of this license is December 31, 2021. And there's a couple of other sentences there. And then, welcome to the practice of medicine in Guam. Sincerely, Nathaniel Berg, MD, chairperson. So here we have Dr. Bliss Kaneshiro getting licensed to practice on November 20 of last year and being a co-plaintiff in a suit filed in February of this year. You see why I wanted to talk about P.T. Barnum? Yeah. Yeah, and then we go back and look at some of the correspondence. We start out with June 24, 2019. And this is a letter from Calamity Jane to Dr. Bliss. She says, I am the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs and am coordinating the effort to bring a doctor or doctors on a rotational basis to Guam willing to help our women, unfortunately some girls, who have a choice to make. Can you please give me a call at your earliest convenience? Give me a call. Next letter, June 25. Forgot to give you my cell phone. Cell phone number sent along. Next piece of correspondence. This is Bliss Kaneshiro to Deborah Nucola and Jane Flores. Now, I'm sorry, Deborah Nucatola. Now, that's not some kind of chocolate drink or something like that. That's what it sounds like, doesn't it?
Sounds delicious.
Yeah. But I'll get to Deborah Nucatola in a second. And here's the letter. Jane, I'm connecting you to Deb Nucatola, the medical director of the Planned Parenthood clinics in Hawaii. She's CC'd on this email and is aware of the lack of an abortion provider on Guam. And this is from Bliss Kaneshiro, MD, professor, director of the Family Planning Fellowship and Family Planning Division, Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology and Women's Health, University of Hawaii John Burns Medical School. So she's a university professor, not a practicing physician. She's a university professor. All right, now let me just turn here for a second to Deb Nucatola. And this is a letter that ran in the Washington Times and over the signature of Armstrong Williams. Okay, all righty. We'll take a short break and we'll come back to the Washington Times.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. If you are a small business, you may be interested in a federal program called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This program can provide federal funds to match equity investments into your company or help you get lower interest rates at local banks. To find out more on how this program can help your small business, please contact your Guam Congressional Office at 475-6453 or at michael.sanicolas@mail.house.gov.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Okay, so here we are, Armstrong Williams' story in the Washington Times. In a scene reminiscent of Silence of the Lambs, a brilliant doctor sits at a table casually munching on salad and sipping red wine.
Chianti.
A nice Chianti, yeah. While salivating over the prospect of harvesting the tender lives of aborted babies. No, this is not a pitch for a new horror movie. This is actually what happened in a video recently released by the Center for Medical Progress, which has since been viewed millions of times on the internet. In the video, Planned Parenthood's Senior Director of Medical Services, Dr. Deborah Nucatola, nonchalantly details the ins and outs of supplying the medical research industry's seemingly insatiable demand for fetal tissue. Fetal tissue. Have we been talking about that lately? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been talking about it in the context of Wuhan virus vaccines. And there are some who say, I'm not going to use a vaccine that has any link to abortion. And of course, the Vatican the Vatican kind of forgetting about that rule that evil has no rights has worked out a compromise where you could actually use two of the vaccines. It's some really nice weasel language that allows for it. But others are not buying it. They're saying if there's any connection to abortion, count me out. Okay. So Nucatola nonchalantly details the ins and outs of supplying the medical research industry's seemingly insatiable demand for fetal tissue. The juicy tidbits, wow, of the 3-hour lunch interview depicting Dr. Nucatola's fetal organ harvesting efforts have already become media fodder, but the subtler and arguably more macabre implications of Planned Parenthood activities have gone largely unexplored. No intent to hunt and peck for aborted fetuses at a local clinic. Dr. Nucatola wants to create a stable pipeline of tissue supply and suggests the undercover CMP agent posing as a medical research tissue supplier to look into Cook County Hospital in Chicago, because there you have the best opportunity to get those larger cases. It's clear that Planned Parenthood is facing somewhat of a problem in that each of its medical clinic affiliates around the country apply different procedures, etc. And yet Planned Parenthood seems to want to drive tissue supply, and doing that ostensibly requires more women to consent to tissue donation. Of course, a fine line exists between a patient requesting donation or opting on a generic consent form to donate tissue and the clinic or some outside party coercing. Where have we heard that word before? A patient into donating the tissue for research. Dr. Nucatola is well aware of this ethical dilemma here, in the sense that in order to best harvest certain types of tissue, The doctor has to know in advance whether the patient has consented. And herein lies a bright ethical line that Dr. Nucatola crosses. Quote, for example, what I'm dealing with now, if I know what they are looking for, I'll just keep it in the back of my mind and try at least to keep that part intact. Yeah. The whole defense of abortion has been typically cast in the media as two primary issues: a woman's right to choose and the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship.
The sanctity of what?
The doctor-patient relationship. But here a doctor introduces a third element. The medical procedure itself could be altered depending on whether the doctor intends to keep some parts of the fetus intact to sell for sale to a tissue supplier. This would necessarily have implications on the safety of the procedure, which, while they may be minimal, could in no way be in my mind, in the mind, even the back of the mind, etc. And it goes on, and the farther you get into this article, the more nauseating it becomes. Now, you probably remember when this broke back in 2015. The movie was shown on TV. A guy named David Deladen and somebody else posed as medical tissue suppliers, and they wanted to sit down with Ms. Nucatola to see if they could arrange a deal to get tissue from Planned Parenthood. And there was some really damaging dialogue in there, and people were outraged when it came out. So outraged that Deladen and another person were prosecuted.
Wasn't that in California?
California. And to make sure that it was properly done right, the Attorney General of California at the time got involved herself to make sure that Deladen took a fall. I'm not going to mention Kamala Harris's name here because I disparage her so much anyhow, but it was her, yeah, Kamala Harris. So, and the guy is still on the hook. He hasn't been to trial yet. He has a civil suit against him. He's paid a hell of a price for this. And what he did is the same thing that others have been applauded for. When PETA, P-E-T-A, let's see, the something for the ethical treatment of animals, went into a slaughterhouse and took pictures of some of the cruelty to animals, etc. The industry was cleaned up, and PETA was given a gold watch, given a nice award for it. This is how crack reporters develop stories. They didn't torture Ms. Nucatola to say these things. They just gave her the opportunity, and she did.
They just press record.
Exactly. That's exactly right. But it just goes to show you how powerful this pro-abortion lobby is in the United States. The forces of evil are oftentimes triumphant, much to our chagrin. So that's Deborah Nucatola. Just a little character development here for this novel, right?
Doesn't sound too appetizing anymore.
Yeah.
But is it really child trafficking if we kill the children first?
Probably not. There's a loophole in the law there.
There's a loophole.
Yeah. Yeah, because child trafficking, everybody gets their skivvies all bunched up about
bad.
that. Yeah. And then here's from Deborah Nucatola, the very one. Hi, Jane. Nice to meet you virtually. I do believe you've been in contact with staff at our Patient Access Center. Our area service director, Dayton Kavarn, was planning to reach out to you by phone. I'm not sure if you've already spoken, but to close the loop, I'm CCing him on this email. And FYI, we've been discussing the need in Guam for several months now. And are eager to speak with you to see how we might be able to meet the need. And you notice there are references here to phone calls. I can't get a phone call with a Sunshine Law request, but let's take a short break here, and we'll come back to Jane and Nuka-Tola.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. Some members of Congress remain critical of the American Rescue Plan, signed into law by President Biden, and fear the long-term economic effect it may have.
The stimulus package became law with no GOP support. Louisiana Republican Senator Bill Cassidy says he believes the economy may suffer with the money being handed out.
It may work or may ignite inflation, which pulls down somebody into a vortex of losing their savings. We'll see.
Senator Chris Murphy, a Connecticut Democrat, says America will prosper because of the plan.
We're going to be sitting on an economy that is going to grow twice as fast as it would have without this bill.
Both senators on Fox News Sunday. Stimulus checks are said to already be showing up in Americans' bank accounts. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
And President Biden has outlined a goal for making every adult American eligible for a COVID-19 vaccine by May 1st. Speaking on Fox News Sunday, White House Chief Medical Advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci weighs in.
Those are quite reasonable goals and expectations. You don't have to fall into one of the priority categories. You got those taken care of, and now you could open it up to anyone. If you look at the number of vaccines that are going into people now, I think that goal of anybody 18 years of age or older will be able to get a vaccine by May 1st. I think that's quite reasonable.
And a winter storm in Colorado is bringing a lot of snow to the area.
It is just kind of sitting here dumping the snow. That's when we get all of that accumulation, and forecasters have been talking about this all week. So the Colorado Department of Transportation, along with state and local officials, have really been pleading with folks not to try to travel by air, obviously, or by road until this system passes.
Fox's Alicia Acuna reporting more than 2,000 flights were canceled over the weekend at Denver International Airport. America is listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Download it now.
A prosecutor in Michigan says Governor Gretchen Whitmer could face criminal charges over her handling of coronavirus-related deaths in nursing homes.
Macomb County Prosecutor Pete Lucido is demanding that Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer release information about involuntary transfers of coronavirus patients to the state's long-term care centers and nursing homes in what Whitmer calls a smear attack.
I'm not going after anyone. I'm seeking the truth because families of lost loved ones deserve to know the truth.
Questions questions surrounding Whitmer over nursing home deaths are similar to scandals swirling in New York and other states. Michigan Democrats and Republicans are also questioning the abrupt and unexplained resignation in January of the state's health director, who was paid $155,000 in what Whitmer has called a separation agreement. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
And Irish health officials have recommended the temporary suspension of the AstraZeneca vaccine after reports of serious blood clotting in Norway. It comes after 4 cases of blood clotting in adults were reported. Health officials said while there was no conclusive link between the vaccine and the cases, they are still recommending the suspension of the vaccine's rollout as a precaution. AstraZeneca said that it would like to offer its reassurance on the safety of its COVID-19 vaccine based on clear scientific evidence. Plus, Duke University issuing a quarantine order Saturday night due to a COVID-19 outbreak.
Duke University issuing the quarantine order for all of its undergrads because of a coronavirus outbreak caused by students who attended recruitment parties. Over the past week, there have been more than 180 positive coronavirus cases. 200 others may have been exposed and have been ordered to quarantine. The undergrads will be forced to stay in place until at least March 21st, and students who live off campus will not be allowed on campus while the mass quarantine is in place. Anyone who violates the order will face suspension or removal.
That's Fox's Sue Guzman reporting. I'm Mary Corsetti, and this is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. If you are a small business, you may be interested in a federal program called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This program can provide federal funds to match equity investments into your company or help you get lower interest rates at local banks. To find out more on how this program can help your small business, please contact your Guam Congressional Office at 475-6453 or at michael.sanicolas@mail.house.gov.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Okay, so here we are, second half of Tall Tales after that wonderful halftime show that we've enjoyed today, like we do every day. And right now I'm looking at the paper trail that leads up to the licensure of a doctor who is a professor at the medical school in Hawaii, who was licensed to practice medicine in Guam on November 20, and just all of a sudden turned up as the plaintiff in a lawsuit suing everybody on Guam except Goldilocks and 2 of the bears in February. So Dr. Kaneshiro, as I mentioned, is a professor. She's at the medical school in Hawaii, and she's been in contact with our Calamity Jane Flores, who's in charge of how do you pronounce the acronym, Jose?
BWA.
The Bureau of Women's Affairs, or BWA. And so here's a letter from Deborah Nucatola, who has really distinguished herself in the era of gynecology, hasn't she? Hi, Jane. Nice to meet you virtually. I do believe you've been in contact with staff at our Patient Access Center. Our area service director, Dayton Kavarn, was planning to reach out to you by phone. I'm not sure if you've already spoken, but to close the loop, I'm CCing him on this email. And FYI, we've been discussing the need in Guam for several months now and are eager to speak with you to see how we might be able to meet the need. Deborah Nucatola, MD. And here's some more really valuable information about Deborah Nucatola, MD, Planned Parenthood. Her pronouns are she, her, and hers. That's on the bottom of this email. She lets you know what her pronouns are. Okay, then next we have Jane Flores to Deborah Nucatola, Bliss Kaneshiro, and Dayton Kavarn, with a CC also to Dr. Ellen Bess, who writes under the pen name Dr. Ellen Bess, B-E-Z, letters to the editor about what a wonderful thing abortion is. And here's what Jane says. Half a day, Deborah. Thank you for reaching out to us here on Guam. Yes, we are in need of abortion services for our women and undoubtedly some preteens. We're also in great need of other services. Planned Parenthood provides free birth control, STD, HIV testing, HPV vaccines, cancer screening, family planning, etc. Now, this is just to kind of dress up the whole thing, because if you read any of the exposés on Planned Parenthood, especially that movie, Unplanned, it was explained to the protagonist in Unplanned that as far as Planned Parenthood is, abortion is where it's at. And the one that we explained used a fast food restaurant as a comparison. Fast food restaurants, McDonald's example, don't make that much money off hamburgers and fries. They make their big money off the drinks, off the pop, the soda. She says abortions are the soda of this business. So the rest is nice, but it's just window dressing. Camouflage, perhaps. We are currently trying to quietly survey clinics on Guam, this is Jane talking, that would allow visiting physicians to perform surgical abortions. Another option, if Planned Parenthood wanted to open a clinic here, is that we do have a medical clinic that's recently closed. Would there be a possibility that Planned Parenthood would be interested in leasing this space to set up its own clinic? They're not that stupid. I would describe the atmosphere on our island with its 165,000 population that is majority Catholic as initially hostile towards this idea, having an abortion clinic. However, over half the voting public cast ballots in favor of our first female governor, Lourdes Leon Guerrero, in November 2018, despite her openly pro-choice stance. So if you really want to put the blame on somebody, where can you lay the blame for this?
Us voters.
Yeah. Okay, so after the story about the governor being pro-choice, Jane says, so there is hope. Because we got a pro-abortion governor.
To place hope in killing unborn babies.
Well, he's hopeful, yeah. Please let us know if you have suggestions or options for us, like maybe getting somebody to sue us. We are grateful for your help and any advice you could give us.
Wow!
Yeah. And then we go on a little farther. This is Jane to Bliss Kaneshiro and Shandini Radu. Dr. Shandini and Dr. Bliss, allow me to introduce through email Dr. John Rivera, Program Chair of the Public Administration Program at the University of Guam. His Master of Public Administration students often assist with research issues. I think his UOG program would be a great partner for your research project on abortion attitudes on Guam, kind of a market survey. I spoke briefly with Dr. Rivera about your intent to find a local partner, etc. And then Shandini writes to Rivera, thank you for your email. We have just submitted our proposal for this project. We are very excited about it and will definitely stay in touch with you. This is February 17th, 2020. So then the story goes quiet up until Dr. Kaneshiro is all of a sudden admitted to practice in Guam. Yeah. Now, I don't know how much that costs. I don't know what the procedures are.
That was in 2020 that they received the licenses to practice on Guam?
That's right, November 2020.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interested in why the media never reported that.
Yeah, well, of course, at that time, the media didn't report it after they turned up as, because they didn't do the kind of research that I do. That's the reason why. Yeah. So after the suit was filed, as a matter of fact, you and I were talking about it. I wonder when those guys were admitted.
Exactly.
Yeah, licensed to practice here. So, yeah, I called up the Board of Medical Examiners, and here it is.
If the media's not curious, who else?
Yeah. Besides Tall Tales. Yeah, the media does just. Hi, I'm a reporter from the Daily News. I'm reporting. I'm doing a story on the 5 murders that occurred last night. Do you have a press release?
Exactly.
I'm a crack reporter. Yeah. Yeah, like all the stuff they let Ignacio get away with, and not a peep out of them.
It's all press releases.
Exactly. Yeah. Here's a Steve Ignacio press release. I just happen to have one right here. This is what a Steve Ignacio press release looks like.
For those who are not watching at home,
it's a blank piece of paper. Steve never says anything. So, and the vigilance group was the one that got the Jane Flores emails, et cetera. So you start to put all this stuff together, and you wonder if P.T. Barnum, if P.T. Barnum is not smiling somewhere, saying, I'm still having an effect here. People are still pulling P.T. Barnum tricks.
The greatest show on earth.
The greatest show on earth. So I think it's easy to assume that Kaneshiro and the ACLU did the same thing that Griswold did in Connecticut. They conjured up a fact situation that would allow them to go to court and get a judicial remedy that they can't get legislatively because the people don't like abortions. So that's what they did. Then the other thing is, how complicit is Calamity Jane in this? And judging from the emails, Calamity Jane never says, why don't you have the ACLU find a couple of plaintiffs and bring suit against the Board of Medical Examiners and the AG on this? She doesn't say that. But I suspect somewhere along the line somebody did.
I'd be interested to see some phone records, if those are at least to see how many times and how long these conversations occurred.
Yeah, what cops call a pen register. Yeah, so I don't know this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Planned Parenthood and ACLU are not gangs, as we say on Guam, are not best buddies, because they have so much in common. So it could very well be that somebody, like Nuka-Tola, says, here's a way we can get around. Let me call the guys over at ACLU. And she explains the situation, and she says, there are two statutes we want to get rid of. The telemedicine statute, which is 601 after the other.
You'll call my muscle.
Yeah. And then the other statute is the informed consent, which we'd really like to get rid of, because that makes women, it causes women to actually think about what they're doing. And women sometimes get cold feet when they read that material in that informed consent matter. And then after they do that, I don't know if we could get them to sign another form donating the fetal remains to medical science. So we need to get rid of that. So you guys over at the ACLU got any ideas? Yeah, we could bring Sue, but we got to have somebody that's got standing. Can you get a doctor on Guam? No. Doctors on Guam wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. You've been working with any other doctors? Well, yeah, Ray Du and Kaneshiro and Honolulu, they're both okay. They're probably not licensed in Guam, are they? Let me see what I could do.
Isn't that a foreign country?
Yeah. So, I don't know how it all happened. I can only sit here and speculate. And I know that Jane Flores came out with almost a Sergeant Schultz. We had nothing to do with this, Colonel Hogan. Nothing at all. But it just boggles the mind that these two doctors, Kaneshiro and Ray Du, who were introduced into Guam, who probably didn't care any more about Guam than they cared about Casper, Wyoming, by Jane Flores, who was hunting for an abortionist. That appears to be their first knowledge that there is someplace called Guam. And then all of a sudden, they wind up getting licensed in Guam and wind up as co-plaintiffs in a suit bankrolled by the ACLU. The old saying is that correlation doesn't equal causation, but the counter to that is, and when there's powerful people involved, there's no such thing as coincidence. This is not all coincidental.
And it started with a denial.
Yeah. Yeah. So, P.T. Barnum, Barnum's Law, Griswold versus Connecticut. I got a nice picture here of Estelle Griswold, the medical advisor and executive director of Planned Parenthood Clinic in New Haven. What a heroine she turned out to be. And of course, you can't talk about Planned Parenthood without talking about the heroine who started it, and that would be Margaret Sanger. And if you don't know who Margaret Sanger, even Planned Parenthood now is distancing itself from Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist, and she wanted to purify the human race by weeding out, right? Eliminating the weeds in the human race. Birth control and abortion were the methods that she used. And this is sad to say, but guess what part of the population she wanted to eliminate with abortions? And she's been pretty successful. May she not rest in peace. You can't rest in peace down there. But she's been pretty successful because Planned Parenthood locates most of their shops in neighborhoods inhabited by African Americans who constitute a large portion of their business. So along those lines, there's one other thing I've got to mention here, and that is that, in this era of Chamorro irredentism, Chamorro pride, this is Chamorro month. Chamorro and I'm going to get to this later on, Chamorro sovereignty. That's what we're looking for now. Chamorro self-determination. This is all kind of, these are all kind of hollow words if there aren't any living Chamorros left. And I'm looking at a graph here that shows abortions on Guam between 2008 and 2017. During that period of time, 1,049 abortions were conducted on people who were not Chamorro. 1,603 abortions, women who identified as Chamorro. So, Chamorro nationalism. This is a matter of equity. You know, that it's only fair that Chamorros be given as much access to abortion as everybody else. Not. So this is just absolutely at cross purposes with what the nationalists are talking about, unless that is what they're talking about. Michael Bavacqua comes out and defends abortion. So, you know, if you were to employ something called the categorical imperative, Immanuel Kant, who has fashioned a rule, we're all familiar with the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, Kant's rule is really more straightforward than that, and it's sort of like act only according to that precept which you would have be the law for everyone else. That's how you know if it's moral. If it's what you want to do and everyone else should subscribe to it, that's the categorical imperative. So if you're in favor of abortion, that would mean that you would think that everyone should have an abortion. And that could go on. That would be a self-limiting phenomenon, wouldn't it? Anyhow, that's the story. You know, Jane Flores, Chamorro babies, and I'm going to have to take a break here for the seventh inning stretch. But in the meantime, I've got Senator Chris Duenas on the line. So, Chris, I'll get to you right after the seventh inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. If you are a small business, you may be interested in a federal program called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This program can provide federal funds to match equity investments into your company or help you get lower interest rates at local banks. To find out more on how this program can help your small business, please contact your Guam Congressional Office at 475-6453 or at michael.sannicolas@mail.house.gov.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Okay, seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field in Chicago. And there has never been a session of the Guam legislature at Wrigley Field, to the best of my knowledge. But I have discovered a senator, a Guam senator, out in the bleachers in center field in Wrigley Field. Good afternoon, Chris. Play ball.
Have a day, Your Honor. Honorable Marine, Senator, my favorite talk show host. I'm actually, right now, I pulled over to just make this call, and I know that I'm not known for this, but make a pithy comment on your commentary today. But I had to mention as well, I never bought into the new normal, but as I pulled in here, the parking lot is full. there's somebody in front of me that's fishing. I see paddle boarding going on with a family, individuals, large groups of individuals walking out here enjoying their exercise, a basketball game going on in the court, and that's why there should never have been a new normal. We need to just stay normal. But what is not normal is aborting babies. And I know that I probably said this to you before, Bob, but because you talked about a proposal and a potential research group and the university possibly being involved in whatever attempts at understanding. Actually, I don't even know how you can understand the destruction of human life, but trying to understand attitudes. I always like to bring this up whenever this topic comes up, because as a pro-life individual, I was challenged numerous times, and sometimes by academics, to say, if you believe life begins at conception, scientifically explain it to me. I said, that's not even a problem. This is the simplest explanation I've ever had to provide. And one is, at conception, when a sperm fertilizes an egg and an embryo ensues and there is life, there's only two forces that stop that: God and man. And I will never accept the fact that man goes in and stops that process. If there is a miscarriage, if there is a stillborn child, if there is any complications during a pregnancy where there's a loss of even the child and the mother, God has a reason for that. And only God can answer that question in the end. But you'll never baffle me with science, because I will throw it right back at you. There are only two things that stop the formation of a beautiful human being to be born as a child and hopefully be raised in God's earth that he created. But if man or if they intervene, that's the only thing that stops him.
You got it, Chris.
And it's just so, it angers me and it upsets me so much. But I always like to put that out for maybe new listeners or others or anybody who would be contemplating the issue of trying to understand that, that cellular conglomerate, you know what I mean? It's just a mass and not a human being, and not a being created by God that has a purpose and that has a destination, is just so ridiculous of any type of an argument. Because you don't even have to be a scientist or a biologist or anybody else to figure that out. It's as simple as there's only two things that stop that: God or man.
Well, let me give this to you to think about, Chris. This is from attorney Vanessa Williams, who represents Kaneshiro and Redu in the lawsuit sponsored by the ACLU. This is what she says. It is impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives.
And I think that's a despicable comment. I'm sorry, but I just have to say that straight away. Actually, I shouldn't apologize for that. Because the thing is that was the reason for my commentary in how I responded to the PDN question of whether I would change the law or introduce a bill to change the law or support voting for changing the law under this current situation to allow for telemedicine abortions on Guam, is simply because of the fact that how absurd for an organization like the ACLU to not consider that unborn child has rights too. And it's not a decision. The decision that you made has already been made once there is procreation. That decision's been made. The decision you're making is to terminate that life.
Well, Vanessa would have us believe that there are other choices that she has to make, like maybe she wants to go to Paris on a vacation, or maybe she wants to go to summer school, or these, a choice is a choice is a choice. And, of course, we've been schooled that it is the woman's right to choose, right, Chris?
Or to choose to go to Dr. Shea if you don't have means and have prenatal care done and arrange to allow another family to raise that beautiful child.
And of course, we also know because of the reports that most abortions are not single teenagers in high school. Most abortions are married women, mature married women. And the reasons for the abortion are there are a couple of reasons for the abortions. One, the Vanessa Williams approach to life, right? I got more important things to do than have a kid. Or two, I was playing around outside marriage. I don't want anybody to know that I'm pregnant, so I've got to get an abortion to save my marriage. So no matter how you slice it, it doesn't come out right, does it, Chris?
Never has and never will.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend.
Okay, Chris, good talking to you. And let's see, probably time for another Joe, huh? No, it's Tim Rohr. All right. A guy who knows a little bit about abortion. As a matter of fact, the next item on the card is Tim versus the ACLU about his letter to the Daily News over the weekend. Hello, Tim.
Oh, I didn't see that on the card, so maybe I should get off so you can can do that. No, I just wanted to say, I'll follow up on what Chris is saying, and this is something for all of our lawmakers to really understand. Nobody is even arguing about the fact that is a human being. That's not even there, So when life begins is not even part of the conversation. Science has long since proved, and the pro-aborts don't even contest that it is a human being and it is alive. They're just as Vanessa Williams argued their thing is, well, we get to decide to kill it or not kill it. That's our choice, So, we're wasting breath really about arguing when does life begin. That's not even part of it anymore. And we just have to understand that is really what it is. Now, Chris mentioned that child has rights. Well, not according to Supreme Court. Basically, there's no denial that that's a human life, or what they called it, potential human life back in the day. What they are denying is whether or not it's a legal person or not. Legal personhood is something different than being an actual human being. So Roe, and I think there was another one, basically, said, it's not a legal person, and if the mother doesn't want the child, it's not a legal person. So the human being thing is done. The other thing was basically you kind of touched on it a little bit about the reason why women get abortions, and ultimately it's just simply last resort birth control. That's all that this is, and we're never going to be able to address the abortion issue if we don't address the birth control issue. And that's something even the Catholic Church doesn't want to touch. They won't even talk about that because they know that 90% of Catholics are actively engaged, or have been, in using artificial birth control, even though it's considered a mortal sin, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, the ability, the contraceptive mindset of deciding, I get to be God, I decide whether or not, sex will lead to a child or not, ultimately plays out in abortion. So this is why we find, what you're talking about there. This is girls, and people, and for those out there who think that all we have to do is make birth control.
You're in and out, Tim.
Walk in a gas station and pick up, a weekend pack of condoms, So it's not like birth control is not available. Come on, And I think the pill costs like $9 a week. Birth control is more available than it's ever been, So it's not about not having access to birth control. The other little dirty secret about abortion is that all birth control has a failure rate. Condoms fail 1 out of 6 times. 1 out of 6 times. That's an FDA statistic. And they're trying to tell you that this is safe sex. You know, aside from, actually getting somebody pregnant, and then you got to get an abortion. We actually have another pandemic on Guam, and it's been for a long time. It's called chlamydia, STDs. All you have to do is Google the word chlamydia in Guam. It'll come up that we're one of the highest in the nation for a chlamydia rate. So because people are using condoms and thinking that they're practicing safe sex, when FDA itself says they're going to fail 1 out of 6 times. So, we just have to, it's not going to happen. I know it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to talk about the birth control aspect of this, but that's why we're never going to make any headway with abortion. We can argue the sanctity of life, all we want. But so long as you can put on a condom or take a pill and decide whether or not a baby is conceived, you're already playing God. And when birth control fails, guess what people do? They didn't want the kid in the first place. Then abortion, and then there's abortion. But just the life issue, I would encourage our lawmakers not to even go there anymore. The sanctity of life or any of that kind of stuff. They're not even arguing. The other side's not even arguing that birth control. The baby's not a human being. They know they're saying it is. They're just saying like you said, I'm planning a vacation to Paris, so let me kill the baby. Anyway, I'll get off so you can talk about my article.
Okay, Tim. Just one more thing, Tim.
Yeah.
And that is that I hear what you're saying. I don't think that our thought process has to be controlled by the other side. And you can really condense the basic question down, condense it down to a basic question, and that is, when is it okay to take the life of an innocent, helpless human being?
That's exactly the question.
And the answer,
that's exactly the question.
The answer, of course, is never.
Right. That's exactly the question.
And regardless of how the other side feels about it, that needs to be presented to them over and over again. Maybe a small percent of them have something called shame left in their personalities. I know that's a long shot, but it's possible.
Well, exactly. And if you are going to go into when does human life begin, then you got to end up with that question. When is it okay with you, to take the life of an innocent human being? That's ultimately the question that we're driving at, and no longer, when does life begin, but when is it okay to kill an innocent, helpless, defenseless human being?
Okay, Tim.
And let's stay on that one. All right. Thanks, Bob.
Good talking to you. All right. So let's see. Getting ready, almost on the home stretch here. Let me chat with another Joe before I head for Churchill Downs. How you doing, another Joe?
Hey, Bob. Didn't Mr. Martinez tell you my phone was broken?
No such luck.
Oh, yeah. I got to fix it today. So
another Joe is a bus driver.
Bob. So really, what it is, Bob, is it's pretty simple. If it doesn't bother you, which it kind of should, the issue of abortion, because really it's an issue of do you subscribe to a culture of life or do you subscribe to a culture of death? If you are willing to turn your head the other way, or whether you're actively condoning or supporting it, or if you're just willing to turn your head the other way, then really you're kind of supporting a culture of death. And you have to ask yourself, can you accept that? And I think people, if they're exposed to it, eventually they have to think about it. They'll think, no, I think I'd prefer to choose life. But, for the people who aren't sure, and that's people who we need to convince, but the people who are convinced, that might be a study, because before there used to be an issue of, we shouldn't have capital punishment because we should study people and why they do these things. Well, then if that going back, 30, 40 years, if that's something that we should be studying, then I think we should at least take a attempt to study why people are animated about choosing abortion. So, but the other thing is adult ladies using it as a last resort for birth control. That's already beyond birth control. That's basically murder. And it's kind of, it's scary that anyone would be callous about that. And the pregnant girls, I think it's an issue for father figures to be involved. I think the man needs to chime in and say, hey, if that was my daughter, I think I want to let her know, hey, I'm not going to beat you because you're pregnant. I'll be supportive. I'll be disappointed possibly because maybe it wasn't responsible of you, but I'm not going to beat you up for it. And anyone who beats up their daughter, what we need to establish, Bob, is a culture of zero tolerance. You're not going to beat your daughter. I mean, in this day and age, the problem we're hearing in the news is from these Muslim, honor killings, and that's bad. So I don't know why did you think that abortion is good. Anyway, that's pretty much what I want to bring up about. Well, you have any thoughts, sir?
Okay, another Joe. Good points. Thanks for calling. And we're going to head for Churchill Downs.
Mesca Bistro welcomes you this Lenten season with some of your favorite seafood specials, house-made especially for you. Try our fisherman's platter, fish tacos, grilled local catch salad, spicy garlic butter shrimp, candied salmon, and even our creamy lobster patka prau pasta. Don't forget to ask about our Lau Lau Style Island seafood purse. You will not want to miss this limited-time seafood special, open from Monday through Saturday for lunch and dinner in Agana. Call 479-2652 for reservations. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Hafaday, this is Severina. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, heading on the home stretch of Tall Tales for this beautiful Monday afternoon. Meaning we still got 4 more days of Tall Tales left this week. So Tim did write a good letter to the Daily News explaining the settlement that was reached in the ACLU suit, and I'm just going to take a minute here and go through it. Recently, the Daily News reported that a settlement in the ACLU abortion suit, quote, will restore abortion access, close quote, and further reported an ACLU attorney claiming the settlement to be a, quote, victory for reproductive freedom in Guam. No! And I guess a lot of people really, I hate to say this, are really stupid because they're taken in by terms like reproductive freedom. What kind of freedom is it to not reproduce because you kill the baby? That's freedom? I'll take bondage any day of the week if that's freedom. However, the court order tells a different story. The ACLU aimed at 2 Guam laws, a 1978 law requiring abortions to be performed in a medical facility, and a 2012 law requiring women seeking an abortion to be given information in person and by a qualified person. According to the order, while the 2012 part of the complaint will go to court, the part relative to the 1978 law was dismissed due to the argument by our Attorney General that the plaintiffs had no case, given that the 1978 law only addressed surgical abortions and not prescription abortions, which weren't available in 1978. The plaintiffs essentially agreed they had no case, and this is part of the complaint, was dismissed, but nevertheless called the dismissal a, quote, victory. Not a surprising characterization given that the same people characterize abortion as health care. Neither did the settlement restore abortion access. Deputy Attorney General James Canto's solid opposition made it clear that it is not the fault of the government or our laws that the only two doctors willing to openly perform abortions on Guam both recently retired, and that no other Guam doctor is willing to perform abortions. Canto's excellent opposition is a primer for anyone who cares about engaging the abortion issue on solid constitutional grounds. There is no need to drag religion into this at every turn. But that is what the Daily News did at the end of this report when it included comment from Archbishop Burns. The paper should have interviewed Canto. And of course, the general tactic of the pro-aborts is to make it not about killing babies, but about religion. Things like, well, keep your religion to yourself. Your religion doesn't belong in my body, and on and on and on.
I deem that the straw woman fallacy.
The straw woman fallacy. Before I put this away, I got to read it one more time. Attorney Vanessa Williams. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. Every other, right? So every other choice in life is of equal weight to whether or not to kill that child. Now,
just replace every other choice against abortion then.
Yeah.
Do I get a large iced coffee, mocha, or an abortion?
Yeah. I decided I wanted to go bowling on Tuesday night, so I had to have an abortion. Yeah. It's just pretty bad. Okay, we got about 10 more minutes to go, and I can at least get started on Tucker Carlson versus the USMC. And the first thing I have to say, I have to be Greta Thunberg here, of course. How dare he? So I've got to, the Marines at least realize they made a mistake. And I'll read that part first. The U.S. Marines said they messed up after joining in attacks lobbed by military officials at Fox News. The official Twitter account of 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force Information Group used a pejorative in responding to Carlson's recent statements on how the military should be focused more on adversaries and less on cultural issues. The Marines shared a picture of a female soldier carrying a male, and one tagged Carlson, writing that the photo showed what it looks like in today's armed forces. And then it says, "Get right before you get left, boomer." They
used boomer?
Oh,
man.
The account said, using a widely considered pejorative, someone born between 1946 and 1964.
Who is not Tucker Carlson.
Which is more polite than saying old codger or old coot. Oh, you're just a boomer. You're too old to understand. Okay, after intense pushback for using an official military account to attack a private citizen, the Marines group said, quote, "We are human and we messed up. What was intended as a tweet in support of our female Marines and sisters serving in uniform was clearly not aligned with our standard practices or appropriate representation of the Marine Corps. We will do better and serve the people. We can do better and we'll collectively take a knee, review our procedures, and get back in the fight. Our focus is to train, fight, and win, and we have a hard time doing that without your support," the Marines added in another tweet. The situation was the latest development in an ongoing clash between Carlson and the military, with some of the force's highest officials lambasting the Fox News host for his views. In remarks on International Women's Day, the day prior at the White House, Biden highlighted how he nominated 2 women for 4-star command positions in the armed forces. The nominations will underscore to young women just beginning their careers in the military that, quote, no door will be closed to them. Military leaders realize, quote, there's much, much more work to be done to ensure that women's leadership is recognized and we have more diverse leaders. Remember now, we went through this business about diversity. Our diversity is not our strength. Biden said, as were some of it is relatively straightforward work where we're making good progress. Here are examples. Designing body armor that fits women properly. Tailoring combat uniforms for women. Creating maternity flight suits. Updating requirements for their hairstyles. I'll bet the Chinese are just quaking in their boots when they read stuff like that. How could we possibly prevail against these people? They're so far ahead of us.
I'm waiting for the new color fashion line of the BDUs.
Yeah. So the Chinese are probably saying, you know, we're 5 years away from the design of a flight suit for pregnant women. We've got a lot of catching up to do. Carlson then told the viewers, quote, so we've got new hairstyles and maternity flight suits. Pregnant women are going to fight our wars. It's a mockery of the U.S. military. While China's military becomes more masculine as it's assembled the world's largest navy, our military needs to become, as Joe Biden says, more feminine. Whatever feminine means anymore, since men and women no longer exist. The bottom line is it's out of control and the Pentagon is going along with this. The segment drew criticism from John Kirby, a Pentagon press secretary. He told reporters that the diversity, now remember, every time you hear the word diversity, somebody is trying to put one over on you. Equity, diversity, inclusion. Those are the code words that don't mean what they used to mean. The diversity of our military is one of our greatest strengths. Yeah, having pregnant women in flight suits will win a lot of wars for you. We are better and more effective not only when we represent the American people, all the American people, but also when we have the moral courage to include our perspectives and ideas into our decision-making. Perspectives that, as the Secretary himself noted Monday, this would be the new Secretary of Defense, are based on lived experience. Now, this is classic critical race theory. That you cannot examine an event and analyze it unless you analyze the lived experience of the participants, the lived experience. And I guess everybody knows by now that our new Secretary of Defense is an African American, which, you know, he may be a good general, but I have a feeling that wasn't the reason that he was selected any more than Kamala Harris's intellect was the reason she was selected to be vice president. Let's see, it's that experience and the professionalism and commitment of our people that has always been our decisive advantage. Adding that one contributor to that advantage is the women who serve in the military, but the armed forces need to work on making the military more, here goes, inclusive. We pledge to do better, and we will. What we absolutely won't do is take personnel advice from a talk show host. No, that's a mistake. They're obviously not listening to Tall Tales. Maybe those folks feel they have something to prove. That's on them. We know we're the greatest military in the world today, even for all the things we need to improve. We know exactly why that's so. Defense Secretary Lord Austin, quote, shares the revulsion of so many others to what Mr. Carlson said in his opening statement. In addition, the Space Force Command senior enlisted leader, Marine Corps Master Gunnery Sergeant Scott Stalker. There's a name for you. Stalker. While wearing his uniform, said in a video that Carlson's opinion is based on 0 days of service in the armed forces. Army Sergeant Major Michael Grinston was among other officers, as you were, yes, his officers, but not an officer, criticizing Carlson. Carlson on March 11 said the Pentagon had effectively declared war on a domestic news operation. He also amped up his critique of what he described as the military's focus on identity politics. Yeah. Diversity. All right, I want to spend a little time on this tomorrow. At least the Marine Corps got it on the right side of it quick. I'm sorry they ever got led astray. Okay, let's break for today. We'll be back tomorrow at 1600. See you then.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Challenges at the border continue. I'm Mary Corsetti, Fox News. The Biden administration faces an early test of how it will deal with the hundreds of unaccompanied children arriving every day at the southern border.
President Biden and his team not calling this a crisis, at least publicly. They are calling it a challenge. This is quite a big undertaking, though, for the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA to be part of this. It shows that the administration is aware that there are problems on the border, especially when it comes to an influx of unaccompanied children. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas made this announcement through a release that the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA are working together to find facilities for these children. Right now, the facilities are totally overwhelmed. FEMA's primary responsibility, though, responding to natural disasters. So this will certainly test the agency to do both.
Fox's David Spont reporting. And California Governor Gavin Newsom is facing recall efforts from Republicans who argue he severely mishandled the coronavirus pandemic. Recall organizers say they have collected nearly 2 million signatures, well above the 1.5 million needed by March 17th to force an election.
When a deep blue state is willing to consider a recall, as we did 17 years ago, they don't do it because they become Republicans. They do it because they've had enough of bad policies and wrong-mindedness by the governor.
That's California Republican Congressman Darrell Issa on Fox News Live. Meanwhile, an arrest warrant was issued for a 65-year-old woman who refused to wear a mask at a Texas bank, saying to a police officer, "What are you going to do? Arrest me?" The incident on Thursday at a Bank of America in Galveston was captured by the officer's body camera. Police say they obtained an arrest warrant on resisting arrest and criminal trespassing charges. Texas Governor Greg Abbott ended statewide orders requiring people to wear face masks in public places, but many businesses have kept their own mask rules in place. America is listening to Fox.